Penguin Random House presents Red Sun by Sudeep Chakravarti, read by Abhishek Ajay Sharma. Dear friends, I am a student. Former Prime Minister VP Singh made a comment. What is stopping the youth of our country from becoming Maoists? How does one become a Maoist? Please let me know. From Maoist Revolution, Internet News Group, December 2006. Introduction. Naxalbari has not died, and it will never die. Charu Mazumdar. Long live the heroic peasants in Naxalbari. Liberation, July 1971 to January 1972. Naxalbari lives. It took a chat with B to set me on the road to find out how deeply. I've known B for some years. He's been around in the corporate world and in the bylanes of some major multilateral agencies. I'd suspected for a while that he was a closet Maoist, but never realized how plugged in he was till 2006, when, at my request, we met one March evening at his apartment just outside Delhi. "What brings you to town?" he wanted to know, as we looked out over high-rise neon suburbia, BPO haven. "Research for a book on left-wing armed movements in India," I replied. "Why?" he asked casually, almost as an afterthought, reaching for a remote to turn down the Sufi rock playing in the background. "Because it's a tragic story of a country at war with itself," I said. "And it can do with all the telling." He didn't seem very interested, but listened anyway. Since 1985, I have spent my career as a journalist tracking India's economic development, which has been considerable. And I am a direct beneficiary of the ongoing economic liberalization and expanding freedom of expression that India's urban middle classes now take for granted. But the giddy representation of shining India in politics and the media that began at the start of the new millennium was making it difficult for me to put aside a glaring public domain issue. I perceived a grave disconnect between urban and rural India, and, even within urban India, between those with means and those with almost none. To imagine that superstar India could be unstoppable with its gross poverty and numbing caste issues was to be in lunatic denial. It was insane to believe, as the country was being told to, that 1 million people employed in the BPO sector would somehow lift 600 million rural folk. It was also dangerous, and there was enough evidence why. As early as 2002, a top economic advisor to former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee claimed to confidants that he lost sleep over the rising Maoist problem. Less than a year later, in October 2003, the then Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, N. Chandrababu Naidu, whose security level was only a notch below the Prime Minister's, was nearly killed when the convoy he was travelling in was wrecked by 9 claymore mines between the temple towns of Tirumala and Tirupati, 600 kilometers south of Hyderabad. Naidu's bulletproof car was mangled and flung on its side, and he miraculously escaped with some cuts from exploding glass, a broken collarbone, and a massively dented ego. The stunning operation was conducted by the Communist Party of India, which is Marxist-Leninist People's War, CPI-ML, People's War. And it happened at the peak of Naidu's hype to turn Andhra Pradesh, specifically the turbulent state's capital, Hyderabad, into Cyberabad. Perhaps he should have paid more attention to his professed friend Bill Gates's premise of danger implicit in the digital divide, the software billionaire's way of explaining the gulf between haves and have-nots. In less than a year, Naidu had lost the elections to the State Assembly by a landslide. Besides reasons of politics, it was widely interpreted as a rejection of glib capitalism in favor, or at least the hope, of inclusive development. Naidu's successor, Y.S.R. Reddy initiated peace talks between his government and CPI-ML People's War and its regional allies. Only a few months later, by the spring of 2005, talks had broken down. There was no meeting ground. Meanwhile, the two dominant groups of Maoists in India, CPI-ML People's War and the Maoist Communist Centre India, or MCCI, had joined to form the agglomerate that now controls the show across the country, the Communist Party of India, Maoist. From 2004, even before this merger, Maoist strikes have been spectacular. On 6 February 2004, they carried out a mass, synchronized attack targeting 8 buildings at Koraput in Orissa. Several hundred tore into the district headquarters and the armory, lifting anywhere between 200 and 500 weapons, including .303 and self-loading rifles, light machine guns, submachine guns, revolvers and pistols, and a huge stock of ammunition and grenades. For good measure, to create confusion among defending forces and to make a point, they also attacked the district jail, the Koraput police station, the office of the district superintendent of police, a camp of the Orissa Special Armed Police Centre, and the district treasury. In Jahanabad, Bihar, just an hour's drive south of Patna, over 200 active Maoist men and women armed with semi-automatic and automatic weapons, and some 800 sympathizers armed with everything from crude machetes to ancient rifles, stormed a prison on 13 November 2005. They freed 341 jailed colleagues and took away with them 20 sworn enemies, also jailed of the Ranveer Sena, the upper caste vigilante army that has for decades fought pitched battles with Maoists in Bihar. It was part of a concerted effort that drew reluctant admiration even from army officers amazed at the planning behind synchronized strikes at the district court, the judge's residence, the main police lines, a paramilitary camp, and the district armory. On 9 February 2006, Maoists raided the main store of the National Mineral Development Corporation at Hiroli in Chhattisgarh's Dantewada district. They bumped off the guards and made off with a massive haul of explosives and other material. The 20 tons of loot was reportedly spirited away by several hundred militia in bundles slung from bamboo poles. When I began work on this book in early 2006, nearly every other week brought news of strikes and counter-strikes by Maoists and security forces. And little has changed since. What stand out are the precisely planned and focused Maoist attacks on the security forces, on vigilante groups like the Ranveer Sena and Salwa Judum, and on state property. In Maoist parlance, this is known as Tactical Counter-Offensive Campaign, or TCOC. An unlikely, dispersed army of 10,000 hardcore underground cadre, to use a phrase of the Central Ministry of Home Affairs, largely secreted in forests and remote villages, is taking on the might of the state, flatly disproving current notions of democracy and its most visible symbol, an elected parliament. They carry, according to intelligence estimates, between 6,000 and 7,000 regular weapons, AK series automatic rifles, INSAS rifles used by the army, ancient .303 Enfields, and a range of revolvers and pistols, some bought but mostly grabbed from police and paramilitary personnel or guards at railway stations in snatch and run or kill and take strikes. In addition, they carry an entirely incalculable arsenal in country-made handguns, choppers, knives, bows and arrows. They build rudimentary but devastatingly effective mines from robbed explosives using know-how initially learnt from the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam, or LTTE. They have also developed basic designs for rocket launchers made through fronts in small foundries across India. As my research gathered momentum and I planned my travel and interviews, vast swathes of the country were already given up to armed revolutionaries and militia. Local guerrilla squads called Dalam in southern and central India, and groups of active sympathizers or the militia called Sangham. Maoist militia was just...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?